Poll any 100 Americans on who belongs on the list of great presidents. George Washington finishes near the top of the list in almost every poll. For 45 years, Washington had given his life to a country that did not yet exist when he started. He surveyed the frontier as a young man. He commanded the Continental Army through 8 years of war against a force that should have beaten him. He presided over the Constitutional Convention in 1787. Then, when the new government needed someone the nation would trust enough to follow, he accepted the presidency he did not want. By 1796, he was 64 years old, his teeth were gone, his joints ached, and his administration was under assault in ways that would surprise anyone who thinks of him only as a monument. The Jay Treaty with Britain had split the country. His cabinet had fractured into open war between Hamilton and Jefferson. Republican newspapers called him a tyrant, a monarchist, a man who had betrayed the Revolution. He was now required to leave. Back then, there was no term limit amendment, but Washington had always believed that if he died in office, Americans would come to see the presidency as a lifetime appointment. The precedent of leaving mattered more than the fight he was in. In September of 1796, he gave his decision to a Philadelphia newspaper publisher named David Claypool and asked him to print it in 3 days. The address ran in Claypool's American Daily Advertiser. It was not a speech. Washington wrote it to be read. He chose print deliberately because print could reach every citizen. What he put into that newspaper was not a victory lap. It was a warning, written by a man who had just lived through exactly the dangers he was about to describe. In his farewell address, Washington opened not with warnings, but with a vision. Before anything else, he wanted Americans to understand what they already were and what they stood to lose if they forgot it.
The name of American, which belongs to you in your national capacity, must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations.
The appellation he meant was Virginian, or New Yorker, or New Englander. In 1796, Americans thought of themselves first as citizens of their states. Washington wanted them to see past that, to see what they had already become together.
With slight shades of difference, you have the same religion, manners, habits, and political principles. You have in a common cause fought and triumphed together. The independence and liberty you possess are the work of joint councils and joint efforts, of common dangers, sufferings, and successes.
Washington was not asking Americans to forget where they came from. He was reminding them of something they had built together that no state alone could have built. The Union was not a convenience. It was the condition for everything else.
Your union ought to be considered as a main prop of your liberty, and that the love of the one ought to endear to you the preservation of the other.
He understood that the arguments against union would come dressed as reason. Certain regions would be told that their interests were incompatible with others. Certain factions would be told they had more in common with a foreign power than with their neighbors. His answer to all of it was the same. The diversities are real. The union is more real.
Is there a doubt whether a common government can embrace so large a sphere? Let experience solve it.
Washington was not a naive man. He had spent 8 years watching the Continental Congress fail to hold the states together. He knew how fragile the Union was. That is precisely why he named unity first, before the warnings and before the dangers. The unity of government, he wrote, constitutes you one people. Lose that, and everything that follows from it is lost too. Washington's second great warning was about political parties, and this one was personal. He had just spent 4 years watching his cabinet destroy itself. Hamilton and Jefferson had turned the executive branch into a battlefield. Republican newspapers had compared him to King George. He was not speaking in the abstract. He was speaking from the middle of it.
I have already intimated to you the danger of parties in the state, with particular reference to the founding of them on geographical discriminations. Let me now take a more comprehensive view, and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effects of the spirit of party generally.
He was careful to say that parties grow naturally from human nature. He was not pretending they could simply be wished away. His argument was more specific than that. Washington abhorred the idea of one faction dominating another. Parties fight. The losing party nurses revenge. The winning party consolidates. Each cycle cuts deeper, and Washington had studied where that road ends.
It serves always to distract the public councils and enfeeble the public administration. It agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms. It kindles the animosity of one part against another. It opens the door to foreign influence and corruption.
That last phrase is the hinge. He was not just warning against parties as a domestic inconvenience, he was describing an opening, a door that faction creates and that foreign actors are always ready to walk through. One of the tools he named was misrepresentation.
One of the expedients of a party to acquire influence within particular districts is to misrepresent the opinions and aims of other districts. You cannot shield yourselves too much against the jealousies and heartburnings which spring from these misrepresentations.
Washington was not warning against disagreement. He believed in disagreement. He was warning against the use of organized faction to acquire power by keeping citizens afraid of each other. And he was warning that once that process starts, it does not stop on its own.
But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty.
He was not predicting collapse. He had studied how republics had ended, and he was warning, plainly, urgently, against the path that leads there. Washington did not treat faction and foreign influence as separate dangers. He saw them as the same danger. In sequence, faction creates the opening and foreign actors use it. In 1796, France and Britain were both actively working to pull American politics toward their side. Both powers were treating American political factions as instruments of their own foreign policy. Washington had watched it happen from inside his own administration.
Against the insidious wiles of foreign influence, I conjure you to believe me, fellow citizens, the jealousy of a free people ought to be constantly awake, since history and experience prove that foreign influence is one of the most baneful foes of Republican government.
He did not suggest it. He did not recommend it. He implored Americans to hear him. Foreign influence, he said, does not arrive by invasion. It enters through the channels that faction opens.
Real patriots who may resist the intrigues of the favorite are liable to become suspected and odious, while its tools and dupes usurp the applause and confidence of the people to surrender their interests.
The tools and dupes in his phrasing are not necessarily aware of what they are doing. They believe they are serving their country. They believe the foreign power shares their values. Washington's point was that it does not matter what they believe. What matters is the result. Washington's answer was not a moral appeal. It was a structural rule, stated as plainly as he could state it.
The great rule of conduct for us in regard to foreign nations is, in extending our commercial relations, to have with them as little political connection as possible.
Commerce, yes. Political dependence, no. Washington closed his address not with commands, but with what he called the wishes of a parting friend. He had given his arguments, he had stated his warnings, he asked for nothing more than that citizens read them carefully and think.
I shall carry with me to my retirement and to my grave the vows that heaven may continue to favor the people of the United States, that their union and brotherly affection may be perpetual, that the free Constitution, which is the work of their own hands, may be sacredly maintained.
The phrase he used for himself in the address was a parting friend, not a commander, not a patriarch, a friend who had thought long about the dangers ahead and wanted to say so before he left. The address outlasted him in ways he likely hoped for and could not have predicted. It was reprinted in newspapers across the country within days of publication. Within a generation, it was being read in schools. During the Civil War, when the Union was doing exactly what Washington had warned against, the Senate began a tradition of reading the farewell address aloud on his birthday every year. That tradition continues today, alternating between a senator from each party. 2 senators, 2 parties, 1 text. Washington described faction as a tool for acquiring power on the ruins of public liberty. He described foreign influence as a door that faction opens. None of those warnings carry a party label. He was not writing for one faction or one generation. He wrote them because he believed every American in every era would face exactly these dangers. The question every generation inherits is the same, one Washington put to his contemporaries. Not which faction are you loyal to, not which foreign nation do you prefer.
The name of American, which belongs to you in your national capacity, must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations.
He believed the Republic was capable of living up to that standard. He also believed it was not guaranteed to. That is why he wrote it down. For Americans.
The founders left us more than a constitution. Their counsel shaped a nation, and it may yet help us navigate what's ahead. If you agree, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.